good evening. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful winter night in Michigan. This is why we all live here, right? Happy New Year. Our roll call tonight. Board members, make sure your mics are on so we can hear you. Everyone's here except Mr. Daniel McCall. He's out of town. Excused. You have the agenda before you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? All right, agenda stands. And we're down to public comment. What I want to say about public comment tonight, if you notice, we do have a public hearing on the amended PUD ordinance. If you want to make comments during that time, I would ask you, we're going to have public comment during the public hearing. So when we get to that point, if you want to, if it contains to the PUD amended ordinance, then I'd like you to speak then. But again, if you choose, you want to just do it at this time, it's fine too also. So we have anybody in public comment? Okay.
Hello. I'm here tonight to introduce myself. My name is Donna Losinski, and I am running to be the next state representative for the 52nd House District. Our current representative, Gretchen Driscoll, is now running for Congress, and so it is an open seat. I live in Salem Township, over by the Meyer at Stephen Jackson, and so I've been a resident there for about 20 years. I currently serve on the Ann Arbor Public School Board as the treasurer of the board, and I was elected for that in 2014. I'm the mother of three teenage sons, so if there are any leftovers this evening, I will be happy to take them home because there's nothing in my house that's not nailed down that doesn't get eaten. I have two students at Skyline High School and one who just left for college. I am also a small business owner. I own a company called Think Stretch. If you ask any child, I'm their worst nightmare. My company offers summer homework for elementary schools to help them keep up their reading, writing, and math skills and help keep achievement up so our kids can succeed throughout elementary and throughout life. So as a small business owner, I'm very connected with the issues in our economy, with the issues that help grow the businesses, that help keep our kids here in Michigan, because small businesses are really the engine where all of that starts and begins from. I've also advocated for education for well over a decade now, and have made significant progress with the state of early childhood and making sure we have affordable and quality early childhood education for all students. So I've done all of that kind of work at the state level and throughout Washtenaw County, and have made a lot of progress, positive progress and change for our community there. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to represent our community, and all of which goes from here, this kind of Farthes Point, all the way over to the edge of Washtenaw County. So it includes Dexter, Chelsea, Manchester, Saline. It kind of looks like Oregon, and then jumps over here for Webster and Salem Township. So if you have any questions, I'll be available afterwards, and I have cards and information. I'd love to hear from anyone what's important to you. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here then. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Bonnie?
Could you ask the young lady what the western edge of Salem Township is, what street?
Let's see, if I was just looking at a map, when I came here, you go almost over to US 23, but not quite.
Well, Salem Township stops at Dixboro Road, so I wondered where the western edge is, because I always thought Salem Township was in the 54th district.
It was redistricted. It was redistricted recently, and so I believe you are new to the 52nd district within the last 4 years. Yeah, so it is new. So it was not included in the 52nd. It was after the most recent census in 2010, and then when it was redistricted in 2012, it became a part of the 52nd. So it is new, which is why I'm making some extra efforts to get out here and I'm sorry, the western edge of the 52nd district is what I was talking about.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, we'll move on down to the public hearing. Consider the PUD ordinance amended. Mr. Winsley. We will open up the public hearing at 7:06, is it, or 7? 7:07. And I believe we need to do a roll call at this time.
Converse,
Here.
Daniel is absent. DeLuca,
Here.
McLaughlin, Trent,
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes. Okay, and I take it that the rest of the yeses are yes. Reggie and Dale, okay. All right, so, public hearing is open. The purpose of the original ordinance was to allow the rezoning of approximately 370 acres situated north of Joy Road between Napier and Goverson Road for research and research application, special district to plan unit development district, subject to and in accordance with specific conditions and the approved PUD area plan. The purpose of the PUD ordinance amendment is to authorize additional time for the developer to make arrangements for future public water and sewer services for the departments, for the development site on the rest of the Goverson Road M14 Urban Services District. So that's kind of what the amendment is before us, to extend it for a year. The Planning Commission has gone through this. They have given each board member their reports as submitted. Mr. Plato, is there anything else I need to add? The reason why we're, you can make any comments if you like on this.
No, just that we have been working with the developer on the development agreement, and of course, one of the critical aspects of that development agreement is providing the public water and sewer to the urban service district. We've gone back and forth and explored many different sources. There had been some discussion with Salem Township. It appears now that discussion has recently come to an end, and therefore we're kind of going back to the beginning with talking with other providers of water and sewer. So we've begun those meetings and negotiations, but that's the main reason we need the additional time for the extension, so we can get utilities in place, firm up the development agreement, and get that done within the next 12 months.
Okay. All right, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant, or if there's any comments you want to make on it, Mr. Fisher?
All I would add is that I agree with what Mr. Plato had indicated, was we've been working very diligently on the development agreement. The largest component to that is the public utility service in the entire urban service district, which includes our property. And we thought we were making tremendous headway from the township, and at the last minute, they kind of pulled the rug out from underneath our collective legs. We've got other opportunities. We're seeking those opportunities, working very closely with the township, and like to continue on with that, and that's why we're requesting the one-year extension. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All right, now it's time for public comment for this public hearing. If anybody here tonight has, Mr. Schaefer.
Is anybody, I haven't heard anything about any impact study. Are they gonna do that, or that's applicable to the USD? Because there's a lot of things in that impact study that is pretty important for a development that large.
Right.
And I think it should be followed. We have a master plan and a zoning plan, and I don't know if if design has gone far enough to impact that, but I wondered if they started anything at all.
The road study is in the process of being done for that area that I'm aware of. As far as the next step, what is the next step?
Well, the applicant
Become to the planning commission with
the site plan.
with the site plan, which has not been brought to the planning commission yet, but will be. I would take it. I don't know how soon it is or when it is gonna be, but that's the next step. And at that point, I believe that's when a lot of the information about road studies and all that probably will come forth at that time. Okay, anybody else? Mr. Hill?
Good evening, everybody. My main concern is, which I raised at the last meeting, was why do we need a year to get these things organised? I'm also concerned that when I read how the agreement was being put together, to me it's very vague, it's very unimaginative, and it doesn't set any responsibilities, timelines, or actions, which I think are key, because if we go back to the history of why PUD was created, it was to take it outside the standard zoning laws. And in fact, it was a copy of the system we have in the United Kingdom. My main concern is that we've got a hell of an opportunity on the site in question. And what I've seen from the information that's in the public domain, and I must comment that very little is in the public domain, and I'm concerned about that, that it's very unimaginative. We have one shot of this, and I think it should be defined in the first document that we're now putting in, because we're trying to pick up a lot of mistakes of the past and set a blueprint for moving forward. And I support you on what you're trying to do. But I think the agreement as it stands at the moment is too wishy-washy, and I don't think it's in Skostak's favour either. It needs to be much more clearly defined. It must look at the basic requirements that this area needs. It needs mixed development. It needs employment. And I'm not talking about strip mall employment. I'm talking about real jobs. It needs to recognise this as a rural area, an agricultural area. That should be built into this development. And there's plenty of examples across the United States, and particularly if you look at places like New York, where they have done large developments that take into account agricultural needs. And I think this is a prime opportunity for Salem to set an example of how you develop an area that is predominantly agricultural, that is right on the edge of a massive urban network. And the type of things that I would like to see Skostak doing is multi-generation housing. In particular, that would make it very attractive to bring in investors from the Far East. I would like to see far more brainstorming and far more questioning of what's in here. And I'm very concerned that we're basically writing a blank check here and no one's taking responsibility for anything. And I think there needs to be a massive improvement on communications. And I think the new administration is helping on that. But I'm also very concerned, like Skostak's are, and as you are, is the behaviour of Plymouth. That isn't how neighbours behave. Neighbours communicate. Neighbours raise issues, but don't use the press to do everything. And I'm very apolitical. I've worked for both extremes in the political parties, and acted as referee many times. I would like us to try and calm this down. I don't want Salem Township signing agreements just to get the threat of legal action out of the way. Because I think what's going to happen is that we're just going to delay the battles. I think we should take it up front, have the battles, and I don't think they need to be. I don't think we're that divided. I think people want to feel involved and want not another Skostak cookie cutter thing that on paper maximises profit and minimises risk. Whereas if I look at it from a purely commercial angle, I think Scosac can make a hell of a lot more money out of that site by being a lot more creative. But if Scosac want to go down this route, I can guarantee that I will be fighting them every step of the inch, and I will use my financial resources to do so, and my political contacts to do so. Because this is insane, the bullying that's going on at the moment. And really what I'm saying is, you can rush into this, but the minute this gets signed, you're setting a blueprint for every other bloody developer to come in here and rape and pillage this area. It's easy for a lot of residents to ignore it. It's right on the edge of our boundary, and you know, it's not in my backyard. But I say it is in your backyard because it's going to actually define your future. I'll get off my soapbox now, but that's my 3 pennies worth. But I can tell you, I'm already going through, I was speaking to my advisors in Chicago, I'm going through every inch of the legislation. I come from a legal family of lawyers. I am going through all the environmental things, and I will challenge every environmental audit that's done. And I'm going to work on the basis that one of the problems we have in Michigan is the problems that departments don't communicate, whether it's county, local, or whatever. Communications are bad, and I'm experiencing that personally on my own farm. And I want to make sure that everyone understands everything is going to be under the microscope, and I'm going to use the media to fight this. Not because I don't want a development, but because I don't think enough people have been able to have a proper say. And I think this is an opportunity to make Salem the place to live and work, not to be a dormitory town and a public dump for the rest of Michigan. Off my soapbox.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I don't know if I can take liberty to introduce Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill purchased the Conant Farm, which is on Napier Road. I don't know if most of you knew Olive and Herb Conant, who have been part of Salem Township for years, and they preserved part of that area over there off of Napier Road. And Mr. Hill has bought it and from the family, and it's great to have him in the township. So thanks for being here tonight. Okay, anybody else?
Mr. Supervisor, if I could just briefly address some of Mr. Hill's concerns.
Okay.
Mr. Hill, the PUD ordinance as it's been put together is entirely dependent upon ultimately both the developer and the township coming to terms on a detailed development agreement. So the details of this development will be, in fact, in that development agreement, which will be carefully reviewed by the township planners and the attorneys and this board. So, excuse me, nothing is finalized with regard to this development until that development agreement comes back and is agreed to by the board. And we're certainly not rushing into that. We've been negotiating for a year already. We're asking for an extension to negotiate for another year. So it's nothing, no one's rushing into approval of this development. We're going to make sure that the details are carefully addressed and carried out.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, then we're going to close the public hearing, which will be at 7:22. And we need a roll call.
Converse?
Yes.
Daniel is absent. DeLuca?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent? Yes. Wensley? Yes. And Whitaker?
Yes. All right. Moving on down to the consent agenda. And it's Mr. Westminster.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. The minutes of last month's December 8th regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We also have the disbursements for December. Out of the general fund, the checks were $67,864.91. That's checks 25,753 through 25,805. We had disbursements out of the escrow fund for $5,292.50, checks 1624 through 1630. We had a payroll of $58,195.37. Paycor charged us $487.50. That's about over $300 more than normal, but that's because they did all the W-2s and all the tax preparations for that. The sewer fund disbursements for $6,850.14, checks 1964 and 1965. For the future invoices for January out of the general fund, $139,239.64. The sewer fund invoices for $6,375.01. And out of the escrow, we have invoices of $260 even. Do I have a second?
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. DeLuca seconds it. Any questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is passed. All right, moving down to business items under the planning and zoning, the PUD ordinance, which we've had some comments, and now it's up to the board to have some discussion on this at this time. So I'd like to open up to the board if you have any questions on this time extension for a year. Mr. Trent, you're looking at me.
No, I wasn't, Mr. Supervisor, but I'm happy to address the issue. If Ms. McLaughlin wouldn't mind me putting her on the spot for just a moment. Other than the modification that was submitted to the Planning Commission for the time extension, going from August to a 1 year, was there anything else of note during your discussion that we should be apprised of?
I wasn't at the public hearing.
Oh, well then, I can't put you on the spot
They
then.
had on it. That was the only real change, was the date.
If I could pose a question to Mr. Fisher.
Sure.
Steve, if you would share with the board, in the past year, since the area plan and the ordinance was approved, what modifications, if any, will Showstack be submitting to the Planning Commission as part of your agency reviews and other engineering possibility changes that you've identified over this past year?
What typically happens after an area plan is approved, we then go into a more detailed engineering as required by your ordinance. And involved in that is meeting with the various agencies, including the county agencies such as Drain Commission and Road Commission, for example. And because of Napier's proximity to Wayne County, it involved two jurisdictions, Washtenaw County Road Commission as well as Wayne County Road Commission. So in meeting with those various agencies as well as DEQ for the wetland issues, we identified in a more detailed engineering scope those issues that have to be addressed. And with that information and meeting with those different agencies, they have their own various requirements. So we take the concept plan, which is the area plan, show them and say this is what we'd like, and then they make their suggestions with this DEQ. They say, well, let's watch the crossing here for this wetland. Road Commission say, well, we might not like the road over here because the curve in the road that it's emptying out on may be somewhat hazardous, or although we're not accepting this public, if you'd be so kind to make them public and then build them accordingly. And with those various discussions, various I don't know if I call them modifications, but the drawings evolved from the area plan. Suffice it to say, though, I know it was a very big concern with both the planning commission and the township board when they approved our area plan, that they didn't want us to exceed the number of units. So we made very certain that we maintained the number of residential units to be the same. In answer to your question to Ms. McLaughlin, I think the only other thing that was in the request before the planning commission that we deleted, and Mr. Plato, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a parenthetical statement saying that we're making modifications, and we deleted that. I didn't want that in there, and as it turns out, neither did planning commission. So that was the only other thing. And the reason being is because we don't have any absolutes at this point. We're working through our engineering drawings right now, and they're quite voluminous. And to address Mr. Hill's concerns, all those issues that he raised will be raised when we submit our plans for preliminary site plan approval. I hope to think it's very soon. We have another meeting scheduled for the end of the month with our engineers. We meet with them every 2 weeks to go through development issues, and hopefully the plans will be in a position to submit those, I'm hoping sometime in February.
Quick question.
Sure.
For some of us haven't been able to know a lot of what's going on, but what was one of the causes for Plymouth Township not able to supply water and sewer? What were some of the factors, or do you?
I asked the same question. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say because it doesn't, for all of us that were involved in that, not only myself, but representatives from Salem Township, we're scratching our head and quite surprised that they objected. We don't really know why. They might be going through some political issues on their own. I know there's an election coming up for some of the members, I don't know how many members of the Plymouth board in August, so, and I know the opposition was raising a stink. I think it was more, we meaning the urban service district, and the utility supplied the urban service district, were more a political football, if you will. But it's my guess too. Fortunately, there's other sources, and we continue to work closely with Salem Township in obtaining those.
If I can answer Mr. Wensley's question, one of the things, having reviewed the video of the meeting, there was a number of residents that were against Plymouth Township providing water and sewer to Salem. One of the thoughts was, and this was kind of shared by some of the board members in Plymouth, was that if they didn't give us water and sewer, we wouldn't be able to get it from anywhere, and therefore there'd be no development. So they were, as Mr. Fisher mentioned, it's kind of a political thing. Their feeling was, well, if they deny it, we'll never get development there, and therefore they won't have to worry about the development. And there were a number of other reasons that were issues that were raised for things that were simply untrue. For example, some of the residents were concerned about water pressure on that end of their township. But of course, if we had connected there, we'd have to put a water tower in Salem Township, so that would actually improve their water pressure, not decrease it. But those are the types of concerns that were raised. Most of them unjustified, but whatever reason, they decided ultimately not to go ahead with it.
I actually had calls after that from current Plymouth Township residents saying, there's a number of us that support it, probably more support it, but in typical fashion, the ones that support don't go to the meetings. And they were very upset, and they want to know if there's a way of reconsidering. They would come to the meeting, and because they saw our development. Some of them were here while I was going through the process with Salem, and were very pleased. In fact, some wanted to move into our development once it's completed. So they were quite upset, and they told me they think it's a minority of residents that were yelling and screaming. So, but that, because it's a Plymouth Township issue.
Steve, you mentioned going through some of the agency reviews that roads may have been an issue that needed to be addressed in your engineering drawings. And I know you shared with me just before the meeting that one of the entry points off of Napier, the road commission recommended that it be moved further north.
Correct.
So you're talking about the intersection of Napier and Ann Arbor Road. And in the original area plan, as designed by you folks and submitted to us for review, part of the logic was that that exit point, that entry point was directly across from the Plymouth Township subdivision entry point, because it seemed to make sense for residents out of both subdivisions. If you had to make a left-hand turn, it's better to have them directly across from each other. How much further north is the road commission recommending, or is that something that would still need to be reviewed by the road commission?
I think it has to be reviewed by the road commission. I don't know offhand, that's not part of the subject matter today. That would be all addressed in the preliminary site plan, it will be on the drawings. And they were concerned how close it was to the existing intersection. And there's other things that they had, like for example, they're not accepting our interior roads as public roads. So the question that we wrestled with is, well, if they're not accepting as public roads, they're private roads, and then we can design them almost carte blanche any way we want it. In reviewing the township ordinance, Salem Township ordinance, your preference is for them to accept them as public roads and to be designed as public roads. So even though there's no legal obligation because they're not accepting them, we thought it would be in everybody's best interest, and we thought it was the preference of Salem Township to then build them and design them as public roads. So that's what we're gonna do. Consequently, some of the curves are a little different than what showed on the area plan. Those are some of the modifications.
And address for us the issue of the exit point off of Joy Road. It's my understanding that the road commission negated that.
Yes, because as you know, the way the Joy Road curves, and it can either continues on to the bend, they don't like a road coming out of our neighborhood too close to the bend. It creates sight distance issues. So they made us eliminate any exit point from our neighborhood onto Ann Arbor Road, Joy Road, over there.
Could it not be moved further west than what was proposed on the area plan?
I don't think we have,
At the
I have to go take a
western
look, I don't think we have homes over, I have to take a look at that. But we thought it'd be better served anyways, just keeping it the way it is off of Napier Road.
Well, my concern isn't with Napier Road, my concern is with Joy Road.
Yeah,
With,
again,
over 170-foot lot homes, the only entry point for those folks, at least the closest one, would be off of Napier Road. And there's no other alternative other than Goffredson.
again, that's where I'd be happy to discuss that when we submit all the plans and we have the plans in front of us at the preliminary site plan approval. I was not prepared to talk about that today because that's not the subject matter of today's request. The preliminary site plan, the revisions were made in the preliminary site plan. We'll present that for your engineers and your planners to look at and for you to look at as well, and I'd be happy to address all those issues at that time. It's hard for me to do it now, I'm not prepared, plus our plans aren't done.
I can appreciate that, but I guess maybe Mr. Plato, you can help provide some counsel to us as board members, since we're at this fork in the road where there was a deadline put in place for the original ordinance for 1 year. And recognizing that it takes time to do all the good stuff that the applicant has been undertaking, along with working with the township trying to acquire water and sewer. Is this an opportunity for this board to have another bite at the apple as far as any requirements or concerns that are getting generated from what's transpired over the past year? Or is it the purview of the planning commission to try to address this particular subject matter, for example, entry points into the subdivision?
Well, it would be, I think, something for the planning commission to address first and make recommendations to this board. I would point out that one of the things we are waiting for is, someone mentioned the impact study. We are waiting for the impact studies that will be done, including, in particular, traffic engineering study. And I don't know, Steve, do you know when that's going to be provided to the township?
All that should be provided at the time that we're submitting for a preliminary site plan approval, which would be the topic of this conversation.
Okay, I mean, obviously, we'd like to have them as soon as possible. The
course.
road commission has done their traffic impact study. That the road commission only addresses the external roads and the roads that are owned by the county. What we're also waiting for from the developer is the traffic impact study showing the traffic flow within the subdivision. And that, once we receive that information, that would be the time for this board to take it up and the planning commission take it up and address how that traffic flow impacts entrance and exits into the subdivision. So it may be, in answer to your question, Mr. Trent, maybe a little premature at this point. I think once we get that traffic information study, we'll have a lot more information available to us and know what we're actually looking at and how to address it.
One of the other questions that I have, Steve, and we have as a township have been saddled, because you brought up the whole issue of public road versus private road and that kind of stuff. We have had a couple of subdivisions here within the township that were private roads. They turned them over to public, and now those roads are crumbling, and the township is then being assessed to go back and fix those roads for those residents, and that cost is excessive. And I really don't want to get us into another situation where we get into the same thing where we have to go back through and have a private road turn public, and then we have to basically then provide for those public. The only way we have to do is put special assessments from going back through. It's really a pain in the behind, and I don't know if I really want to go down that line again.
Well, that's why you like our plan, because our plan is designed as if they were public roads, but they're not, they're private roads. So our association would be responsible for their own roads. The design is as a public standard, but the county doesn't want to accept it, so you got your cake and eat it too.
Well, that's what I'm really
Yeah, that's probably why you voted in favor of it.
All right, any other questions?
No, I just have a comment on the extension. Again, the struggles, it's always been the sewer and water. Time frame a year, we know how quick a year can go by. I think this is a minimum request of a year for them to try to gain what the ultimate gain is, the sewer and water. And that's, everything else is pretty cut and dry.
Anyone else?
Just keep in mind also that obviously we can reach terms on a development agreement, but we have less time than a year, we will do that, and we'll work diligently toward that. But this giving you 1 year extension prevents us from having to come back to the board again, redo the PUD ordinance, and ask for another extension.
All right.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could ask Mr. Fisher, I know in the past there's been some questions about the escrow account being kept in a positive balance. There was information faxed to your attention earlier today. I just wanted to confirm it. Did you receive that?
I did receive it this afternoon. It was, when did we talk about, 3 o'clock or so? It was after you and I spoke. Otherwise, I would have mentioned to you.
Did you bring the check with you?
I left in my other wallet.
We'll pick it up tomorrow. All right. All right, Mr. Winsley, would you like to read the motion?
So the motion before us is the motion to amend the PUD ordinance. This is the ordinance rezoning approximately 370 acres situated north of Joy Road between Napier and Godfredson from RRA to PUD, subject to in accordance with the conditions and PUD area plan. The first amended PUD ordinance has been noticed, reviewed, and recommended for approval in strict compliance with the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. So I am making the motion, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, TJ seconds it. Any other discussion? Should we do a roll call on this?
Yes.
Thank you, Will.
Okay. So roll call vote. Converse?
Yes.
Daniel is absent. DeLuca?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes. Okay, moving on down to reports. We have the clerk expenditure report submitted, treasurer's report, and we're down to the fire department. Mr. Chief Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. In your board package, you have the calls for December. We had 42 calls. Over the entire year of 2015, we had approximately slightly over 500 calls for assistance through the department. Again, it's been up. Our response time, again, was under 7 minutes. Significant events just occurred. We had one structure fire within the township. I will comment that it went to a second alarm, and then from the second alarm, it went to a tanker task force. And we got some, I believe, great support from our neighbors, including Wayne County. Wayne County, Canton, and Northville came over and helped us out. So the other thing I would mention in the fire that it was a neighbor who spotted the fire and reported it. So again, it's neighbors helping neighbors is a good thing. The last thing I want to report is obviously today the roads are bad. On Pontiac Trail, we've had no less than 4 car runoffs on Pontiac Trail, particularly around 5 Mile. Road Commission's been out there, but as you can see with those open lands with that and the wind coming the way it did, it just blows the snow right back on you. So just be careful in the travels. Make sure you wear your seatbelts and keep your speeds down. That's all I have, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, Chief, thank you. Okay, Washington County Law Enforcement has been submitted, and we're down to board discussion. The sale of the old fire pumper truck.
So the tanker is nearing completion. We expect delivery probably within the month. We obviously have a limited space within the fire station, so I would like to petition the board to allow myself to work with the clerk to set out an advertisement to sell the old tanker. Of course, that would not occur until we receive properly the tanker and its functioning, but I didn't want to wait another 30 days if we receive the truck and we get function to keep the apparatus around, because we don't like to have a parking spot for that truck. So I would like the board to consider the ability for the fire department to advertise that, to go out for bid for the highest bidder, similar to what we did with the small trucks. We'd like to do that with the large tanker. It's obviously at the end of its life, will cannibalize anything that's salvageable off there. The new truck is coming with turnkey, which means basically hoses, nozzles, basically all the equipment. There'll be some stuff that will take off the old truck, but for the most part, it needs greener pastures, which is where I suspected it won't end up at.
Okay, so do we need to make a motion to have that done?
I could make a
All right.
motion, and then we could get a second and see what we come up with. So we have a motion to advertise and bid out the sale of the old fire pumper truck.
It'd be a tanker, it'd be the tanker pumper.
Tanker pumper, sorry.
What number is that generally referred to?
That's gonna be 905.
Have all the other vehicles been picked up, right?
Yes.
All right.
Very happy to hear that.
All right.
And thank you, the clerk and the clerk's assistant, Kim and Mr. Wensley, to get that happen, to make that happen.
All right, do we, so a motion to advertise and bid out the sale of the old fire tanker pumper truck number 905.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where do you advertise or, you're putting this up
So
for bid?
we're obviously gonna do the local papers, and then there's a statewide paper that I would suggested, and then we advertise it on our own website. And then surprisingly, word of mouth gets it pretty far too. So we'll try to get it as many settings, especially as free as we can. We'll try to get as many areas that we can get it into. I'm gonna be surprised, because I was surprised with the small truck sell.
Right.
I had no idea what this was
Great
for.
job, yeah.
Because it would be, I mean, for parts.
Well, you know,
Salvaging, right?
honestly, I think what you might find is a farmer might like it for the tank and allow it to water its field or use it for whatever purposes for farming. So that's the rumor that we heard it might go for. But who knows?
Construction sites too.
Construction site, there's another example. Yep, water truck.
Yep.
Are there online, is there any online sources?
There are, and we'll try to hit as many of those we can. There's a fire advertising newspaper for the bigger trucks that I was thinking that we probably, so I was gonna work with Mr. Wensley on trying to get those in there. This is just the step to say, okay, when the truck gets here, if it gets here early enough, we'll start that process, because we wanna get it out in there, wide dissemination to get as much of the bid we can.
We won't do anything though until
Correct.
the new one gets.
So we get the new one here, make sure the guys, it works, it functions, but we don't really have a lot of parking spaces out for it outside.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed.
Thank you.
All right, general updates, we have any, other than we talked about the Plymouth Township water, sewer, that's kind of the updates. All right, well, we're down to public comment.
Yeah, Gary, earlier I heard Steve Fisher mention that he talked to Dave Trent earlier today. Why is he talking to a trustee and not you?
Well, Dave is part of the committee that was formed about 3 years ago on that task to work with Shellstack on that development. So, Carl.
I got a question for the fire chief here. What do you think about that development of 580 homes that are 10 feet apart, for the most part? How's the fire department go?
So it's gonna change the township. We're talking about, for the first time in the township, having fire hydrants. We're talking about having a lot of residents, big houses. It's definitely something that, as the planning board moves forward, the fire department's already in the stages of looking at what is that gonna take and what are we gonna need. And that's working with the residents, that's working with the developer, and that's working with the board, and coming up with the plan. And we need to have that kind of in place as it's built. So part of that step is this new tanker is definitely gonna help in that manner. And having hydrants in our township is huge for us. We've always had to go to Plymouth Township or Northville. South Lyon's been really nice in building along 8 Mile, but now we're talking water in the township for the first time. It's gonna help the neighboring area for your insurance. Your ISO rating is gonna go down. So we are working actively to get our fire ISO rating down. And if we're successful in that, everybody's gonna enjoy in a savings that a reduction hopefully in your insurance costs. So we look at it as positive but cautious as you guys do, because it's in my back door as well.
Yes. First, Mr. King.
At one time, didn't the township have a piece of property donated to them right over there for a fire station?
We had a piece of property, I'm not quite sure it was developed for what the intent development was. But
Well,
we-
back in the early 70s, the people had that little store over there, Nagnus, donated a piece of property to the township to build a future fire station on. So if that could be a secondary thing, put another station over there. This is about the only township around here that only has one fire station anyway, I think. You know, as their population increases, maybe that might be a problem.
It's in our development plan, they're definitely looking at that as the population shifts. You know, we've got that M14 corridor, we get a lot of traffic in there with vehicles. I was out there at 6 this morning in a car accident. We're definitely looking at that, and, you know. Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
That actually actually got to my question, which was with 580 homes, I presume that you're looking to see the load on, and potentially even another piece of equipment over there.
So
But you answered that already.
and the other thing that we're looking at is now we're talking structures that have heights, you know, over 2 stories. Generally, Salem Township doesn't have a commercial structure like that. So as that development comes to the board and us, those are things that we will look at for planning purposes.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I have a few comments I want to make tonight. I got 4 different things I need to bring up, and I'll make it quick, so please stand by. First of all, the first thing I want to bring up to, I told the public I'd get back to them about the issue on Kalo and Son that had been brought up in previous board meetings. I had met with our zoning department about Kalo and Sons, Rodney Nanny and Donna Cripps, over the issues that had been going on there. It was found that Donna had approved administratively some items that should not have been approved by her, but should have went back to the planning commission. And their report that when we met, they had said. We have instructed Donna Cripps to send a letter to Kalo and Sons about the mistake and about them to return to the planning commission. I do want to make a point about this, though, that number one, what he is doing down there is an allowed use under heavy industrial zoning, period. That is an allowed use with what he's doing. A week or 2 ago, I'm not sure when it was, Mr. Plato, I had you here along with our planner. Mr. Kalo came in with his attorney and also his engineer and myself and sat down and informed us that they will be coming back to the planning commission and be willing to discuss the matters that are at hand. I believe, I'm not sure, they're talking about coming in on this month yet, which I believe is October the 25th. I believe that's the next planning commission meeting, if they have everything ready at that time. January. What did I say? October. All right, I'm already thinking months, okay? Sorry.
Got work on your mind.
Yeah.
Salem Springs.
Yeah, so, again, you know, it's something that, you know, we need to address, and unfortunate, but again, it's an allowed use, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this is done right. And if they want to put the blame on me, okay, it's okay. You know, I'm not sitting watching the planning and zoning, but at the same time, it should have been done and it needs to be done right. And then during the planning commission meeting, it can be talked about issues that have been, I mean, I want to say for the last 2 years, I have been working on the complaints and talking about issues that they have been complaining about and trying to put in some, you know, plans and some remedies that the company has said that they would do to lessen some of the effect that the people are complaining about. So that's coming up, so I didn't want to address that. The second is this is my turn, let me finish. This is the zoning board of appeals. It was mentioned last month about complaints about as far as appointments. It was mentioned about appointing the planning commissioner and board members of the ZBA and how it might put the township at risk. So tonight I have the article. I made some copies. I'm going to put them at the back desk so that those of you during the statement that was made that we were doing it wrong, putting it at the township at risk is not is false. It's very clearly here says that we must appoint a planning commissioner to the zoning board of appeals. So I'll have that out there tonight. Also, let's talk one more thing about the person also had mentioned about picking up the report on our newsletter cost. It was mentioned that it was $20,000. We do have reports here of, it looks like we do like 4 newsletters a year. The highest point right now is $12,864, which is a far cry from $20,000. So we must, you know, be correct about our so they didn't come in and FOIA the information, so I'm going to make it easy for you. this will be at the back table tonight for your information, what it actually cost us for our newsletter. The newsletter has been, yeah, I admit, it's frustrating. You know, people don't get stuff in time. We definitely want the most important information to make sure that it does get out to the people in hand that really affects the township, considering the landfill, considering the urban services district. Them issues are important, and that we get it to the public to make sure that public are aware of what's going on. It goes to all of our residents, and that's probably the best way for us to communicate with the people. I also think one of our planning commissioners, Augie, had recommended, and I think it might be good if we could do this in our future articles, to put in, if some of you would rather have the newsletter electronically, maybe you can email the township, and the township can save money on first class stamps, and we can have, some people just like it that way. So maybe that's something we should do to help save costs. But once again, there was a slight increase in the amount. I think it was like 12,800 before. It was 11,900, almost 12,000 before. But during that time, we did go from bulk rate, where a lot of people were not getting them, went up to first class, and therefore it was more money due to the first class. And also there were some people that were not added and had not been getting it that live in the hamlet here. So we did get that addressed. So if, Sherry, you wanted to come and get these, hun, and take them back and put them on the back table. Lastly, I want, yeah, that's both of them. We can be back there if people want them. Lastly, which this is really disturbing, but it is kind of comical in a way. Stop the expansion is a flyer that's been passing around the township. And this, again, is exactly what we talked about at the end of last year, people not communicating and at least giving this board a fair chance. It says Advanced Landfill is in the process of getting state and local approval to expand the landfill for 240 acres north side of 6 Mile Road. What does this mean? Increased truck traffic, increased noise, increased foul odors, decreased property values, decreased quality of life. This is the part I really like. In a recent Salem Township board meeting, Supervisor Gary Whitaker, owner of Three Cedars Farm Theme Amusement Park. And first of all, I want to stop there and say thank you very much, because every time they mention Three Cedars Farm, it does really good for me, because my business goes way up. So thank you for always mentioning that. I appreciate it. Since 2009, we've never spent any money on advertising because of Salem Township, so thank you very much. Anyway, it was brought up the possibility of paving Chubb Road or Napier Road to facilitate routing the increased truck traffic to the landfill. Supervisor Whitaker has come out in favor of this plan and is working with the landfill to facilitate the expansion. You know, what a dishonest lie that this is. I mean, if you guys have been here at the meeting, we have talked about, we put in the newsletter that Advanced Disposal came to our meeting and proposed that they would want to come and talk to us about expanding the landfill. And all we have done as a board, or I have done, is take into consideration that we need to form a committee. We formed a committee to say that when they do come here, that we are ready and want to talk to them about the future expansion of the landfill, if that is what the people of Salem Township want. And we need people's input, we need people to look at this. Now, when I talked about truck traffic, we're talking about a lot of different things. One is, we talk about the Kales operation. You realize there's 30, 40 trucks that were approved back in 2012. You know, back then, you know, are people looking at the impact of trucks that are coming into our community and that people are complaining about? There's never been a plan of truck traffic in our township other than going out Napier Road, or out 5 Mile to Napier Road up to Beck Road. I mean, that's ridiculous with a huge landfill with everything coming in. So people are complaining, they're tearing our roads up, and we need to have a plan. We need to have a plan and put it into place, and I'm saying if the landfill expands, and if this township wants it to expand, then we need to say, look, we need to do something with our roads. And all I said is that, just sitting and thinking, brainstorming, I need you folks to brainstorm of what ways is the best way to get trucks in and out of our township instead of everybody coming in all different directions. We don't have even an ordinance to pass to stop the trucks that are coming down some of the roads. So all I'm saying is that, look, when something like this happens and this kind of crap goes around our township that's just untrue, it's just unfair. It's unfair to me, it's unfair to every board member that's up here. And our township needs to work together, whether we want the landfill or not. I mean, what I would like this thing also to say, that if you're paying $10,000 in property taxes, you might be paying another $1,500 or more because of taxes going up because we're gonna have to charge people local taxes for the township. Or, how about garbage pickup? You know, people are paying $400 or $500 a year for trash collection. So if you want to start that, that's going to be added to your tax bill also, or you pay for it out of your pocket. So again, it's sad that people have to take this route. We know who the people are, and again, I respect that. That's the way they want to live. You know, I could care less. That's the way they want to be. That's fine, and I can live with that, and I know this board can live with it. But we do need to hear from the people of Salem Township about the expansion of our landfill. If that's something we want done, it grinds me to death that we're taking everybody's garbage and then they don't do anything to help us. We know that Washtenaw County takes a ton of money off that hill also, and what are we getting for it in back? You know, and I don't know how many times I've told the road commission had stopped at the farm around Christmas time, and I told them, I says, I'm sick and tired of hearing county officials saying, you know, well, Salem's got all the money, let them pay and take care of the roads. That's just wrong, and I'm tired of hearing it. It's like, well, you know, we might have money from the landfill, but at the same time, we're taking their garbage and ask all them guys, where's your garbage going to? It's going over here. So all the trucks are running through here, tearing our roads up. So they need to look at us in a special way and say, we're gonna take care of your roads better. I'm just saying, this is stuff, if the landfill comes to us, if people in this township want that landfill, we need to do something with truck traffic, with our roads, and make sure that we get what is coming to us so that we can not have these problems. But even if the landfill doesn't expand, what do we do with all the truck traffic on Chubb Road? I mean, for years, the township has just let this go and let the trucks go wherever they want. And no one's ever done any planning. And that goes from every administration right down the road about where are these trucks, how are they gonna go? Yeah, we do have some truck signs up around the areas around Salem, around that, but you know, we got them coming down every which way. And it doesn't make sense to me, the landfill, the size of this one is, trucks coming in from every direction, and they only have one route. It doesn't make a bit of sense. Anybody would tell you you're nuts if you're running a business. So, again, I don't mean to vent, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support. I know you guys, most of you folks do. And, you know, we're here to listen. And again, it doesn't matter if you like my policies or you like this board, but we do want to hear from you. And we want to make sure that our township is, you know, run right, and we have plans, and we look ahead to plan some of these things that are coming down our way. Yes?
Gary, who gave Donna permission to sign that Cato deal? And
Donna
yeah.
Administratively,
Yeah, did you give her permission?
no. There is, you can, planners, you help me out here if somebody knows, but the zoning administration can approve a document administratively, and that's what she did.
And being in her position, shouldn't she have known that it should have went back to the planning commission
I
instead
agree.
of signing it?
And I believe our planner should have known that too.
Well, is anything gonna happen because of that?
Well,
Is Kayla
Stay tuned.
gonna shut down until this happens?
no, it's allowed use. All right, so before we, go ahead.
Just a brief comment, Gary. I really appreciate hearing what you just had to say. In regards to Washtenaw County, I think we're really getting the short end of the stick from Washtenaw. we're like the milk cow, they take all the money and everything, but they don't feed the cow at all. And I really think whatever efforts with our citizens and with our board or whatever, that we can put more pressure on Washtenaw County, because,
Exactly.
and I'm thinking like when the elections come up, whoever's there at Washtenaw County, I think I'm not gonna vote for them,
Yeah.
because I don't think we're
Well,
getting a fair shake.
And it's funny, Dan, you mentioned, because it's the most dreaded meeting I have. It's tomorrow at 5:30 out in Washtenaw County that I'm on that committee. It's painful, just painful. Because I really don't say a word, but when it gets my time, I'm ready. You hear them talk about all the, they have to have a plan. They have to have a future plan, say 50 years from now, where their waste is going to go to. And I'm glad they put me on the committee, because I will go and not say anything, but they're saying it's probably going to be a year or two before this happens. But I'm glad I'm on there, because, as I said tonight, this is what I'm going to come to them before, if this thing opens up for a host agreement that we have to negotiate with these people.
When we moved out here, Washtenaw County was head and shoulders above Wayne County for maintaining the roads. Now it's the other way around.
Right.
And Gary, that's one thing we'll agree about. There needs to be a big shakeup in Washtenaw County.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think our new state representative will agree and help us on that.
Notice you've already been on.
I appreciate that.
Gary, may I just give you a little wisdom? As you know, I was a police chief for a long time, and all used to get all sorts of things posted about whatever my guys did and all that. Let me share with you that the First Amendment of free speech does not require that the speech you give is true, accurate, or real. It's just you have a right to speak. But the other thing about the First Amendment, and I don't know, Mr. Plato will probably correct me on my constitutional thinking, is it's a two-edged sword amendment. It cuts in both directions. So whoever posted that took a swipe and took a cut. You vented and took your cut. What we need to do in this township is stop it. We need to dull the sword and work forward, because we all drive the same pitiful roads. We all see what happens with the truck traffic. We all realize that Washtenaw County is deriving benefit from us, yet we have to pay for statutorily required law enforcement. You know, if you dial 911, the sheriffs or the state police have to respond. We're paying for it. And it's time, and I'm with you, it's time that we the people, start attending the Washtenaw
And you know,
County
I
meetings.
understand that there's guys on that road commission, once they get up so high, there's nobody to vote them out of there. They're there until they retire.
You mean
Yeah.
commissioners?
The commission,
probably?
yeah. There's nobody to knock them out of there.
Right.
So they make up their own rules. And we gotta get in there and knock those guys out of there. And you'd have a lot more, better roads too.
Mr. King?
Just a quick one on, is there some reason why, I know it's why, because the trucks would use it, that mile of 6 Mile is gravel. Does
Well, I was
Township
with the-
don't do anything
yeah.
about that? They don't want the trucks going down 6
Right,
Mile.
I was with the supervisor, Bob Nix, not too long ago, and we went up at the top of the hill, and you know, and he just said, people are complaining about the trucks that are actually using that road.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they're complaining about it, and they want it stopped, so, but I believe that's the reason they don't wanna pave it, is because of that.
Well, definitely, they leave it so rough, you don't want to
Right,
drive down it.
right.
But some truckers
Right,
still use it, but,
right.
yeah.
Bonnie?
Just to correct one thing, the people on the road commission are appointed, they're not voted in.
Right.
And they're appointed by the county commissioners.
Yes.
So when they said vote them out, there's no way you can vote them out.
That's what I was trying to get at.
They have terms, but they still, we have known commissioners that have been there for eons.
And there's no way to get them out.
Anybody else here? Okay, thank you very much. I do have one announcement. Mr. Chen, you wanted to make an announcement?
Well, I guess it's an announcement.
All right.
My name's Phil Chin, for some of you know me, some of you don't. Precinct 1, Salem, Republican Party. I am Salem's representative to the Washtenaw County Republican Party. And for those of you who have pencil and paper or good memories, in the event you want to get hold of me, my email, this is all just the opener. My email is philipschinn@aol.com. PHILIPS, like Steve or Sam, Chinn, CHINN, 2 N's, like Nancy, at AOL.com. In March, our state requires that we have a convention for presidential primary. And the Democrat Party does the same as the Republicans. Required by some notes. The Republican Party is on February 20th of this year. We are having a pre-convention convention. And the purpose of this is to acquaint precinct delegates who have already been elected. We're in our second year now. But to acquaint precinct delegates with what can you expect when you start dealing with a state convention for things like presidential primary. That will be the purpose of this pre-convention convention. But a secondary purpose for that, for those who are interested, and it would be Republicans, those who are interested, you are welcome to come to this. Again, I gave you my email, you can get hold of me, I'll give you more detail. You are welcome to come to this and learn what it might be to be a precinct delegate in a political party. Great many people run for election and then don't do anything. They don't get active. That's not the purpose of being a precinct delegate. Anyhow, so that's some of the stuff that's going to be learned, and I would lay odds that the Democrats, I can't speak for them obviously, although this young lady can. By the way, she didn't tell you there are 2 Democrats running, and she has to win her primary. You've seen the second one is very interested in being here and announcing it. I'm not advocating for anybody. But anyhow, so it's a good way to prepare to become a precinct delegate. You might want to consider that this kind of thing is open to you. It's how you have your say. We've just had some discussion about having say. It's how you have your say in what goes on in Washtenaw County. And you have it from the Republican viewpoint if you come to ours, and I'm sure that this young lady can give you the information on the Democrat side. This is an equal opportunity announcement. Then the fundraising statement. We are also holding a Lincoln Day dinner February 29th. Again, there will be more detail. I'm sorry, 25, February 25th. On an election year, every 4th year, which happens to be an election year, February has 29 days. There'll be more details to come on that, and I would bring them to the February meeting here. But again, should you want to have the information early or want to contact me regarding the February 20th pre-convention convention, again, it's philipschinn@aol.com. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right, thanks, Phil. All right, folks, thanks again for being here. There's refreshments back there. Please stick around, take what you want, and Happy New Year to you. We're adjourned. Thank you.